Come closer, dear. Pull up a chair. I want to tell you a story about a young woman named Jennifer Martinez and the day she let the truth walk into a room full of people who had spent months pretending it didn't exist. Now, I've told a lot of stories in my time, stories of floods and famine, stories of women who survived things that would have broken lesser souls. But this one is different, because this isn't a story about surviving a disaster. It's a story about surviving people. And sometimes, child, people are the hardest thing of all to survive. Jennifer was 29 years old when she met Daniel Hawthorne at a charity auction in downtown Chicago. She was there representing her father's company, quietly, without fanfare, the way her parents had always done everything. Daniel was there with his family, the kind of family that arrives in a convoy of black SUVs and expects the room to rearrange itself around them. He was charming. Of course he was. Men like Daniel are always charming. He had warm brown eyes and a laugh that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He asked her name twice, as if he wanted to make sure he was saying it right. She told him later it was the asking twice that got her. By the end of the evening, he had her number. By the end of the month, he had her heart. And by the end of 6 months, he had proposed on a rooftop in the city with a ring that her mother said was beautiful and her father said was the right size for the wrong reasons. Her father was, as it turns out, correct, but we'll get to that. Jennifer's parents, Rosa and Eduardo Martinez, were the kind of people who had built everything they had with their own 2 hands. Eduardo had started mopping floors when he was 19 years old. He understood the dignity in it, the honesty. 30 years later, he owned Martinez Premium Facilities Services, a company that managed maintenance, janitorial, and facilities operations for 43 corporate buildings across the Chicago metro area. One of those buildings happened to be the headquarters of Hawthorne Capital Group, the very firm where Daniel Hawthorne worked, where his father, Richard Hawthorne, ruled like a monarch who had never once been told no. Jennifer knew this. She found it romantic in a quiet sort of way, the invisible thread connecting her world to Daniel's. She imagined it as a sign. She had not yet learned that some threads, when you pull them, unravel everything. The first time Jennifer met Daniel's family, it was at their estate in Winnetka, a suburb north of Chicago where the houses sit so far back from the road you can barely see them, which is, she would later understand, entirely the point. Daniel had told her not to worry. "They'll love you," he said, squeezing her hand in the car. "Just be yourself." She was herself. That was the problem. Richard Hawthorne met her at the door with the smile of a man conducting an interview he had already decided the outcome of. His wife, Margaret, looked at Jennifer the way certain women look at things they are deciding whether to keep or return. Daniel's sister, Clarissa, was 26 and sharp as a letter opener. She said all the right words with all the wrong eyes. They sat down to dinner, a long table, the kind that requires you to raise your voice, and the questions began. Where did you go to school? What does your firm do? What neighborhoods do you know in the city? Jennifer answered honestly. She had gone to DePaul, she worked in business development, which was true, she handled client relationships for her father's company. Her firm serviced commercial properties across the metropolitan area. Richard Hawthorne nodded with the particular nod of a man filing information away under a category he had already labeled. Maintenance, he said, eventually. Not a question, a placement. Facilities management, Jennifer said, just as evenly. Of course, Richard said, and moved on.
After dinner, when Jennifer went to find the restroom, she passed the hallway where Margaret and Clarissa were speaking in the low, carrying voices of people who do not truly believe they can be overheard. "She's very pretty," Clarissa said. "Pretty isn't the question," Margaret replied. "What is the question?" "Whether Daniel is going through a phase or making a mistake." Jennifer stood very still for a moment. Then she straightened her dress, found the restroom, looked at herself in the mirror, and made a decision. Not a decision to leave, not yet. A decision to watch, to learn, to wait. It was the same decision her father had made 30 years before, in a building that would one day bear his company's name on the service contract. She came back to the table smiling. She passed the rolls, she laughed at Richard's stories. She was, by every visible measure, a perfectly charming guest, and she began that night to understand the shape of what she was walking into.
The engagement party was held at the Hawthorne estate, 3 months after Daniel proposed. 200 guests, catered by a firm that Jennifer recognized. They were a client of her father's company. The irony sat in her chest like a stone. Rosa and Eduardo Martinez arrived in their best clothes. Rosa wore a deep burgundy dress she had bought specifically for the occasion. Eduardo had a new suit, charcoal gray, with a tie that Jennifer had helped him choose. They looked dignified. They looked like what they were, a family that had made something of itself. They were seated at a table near the kitchen. Not the kitchen table, you understand, a table near it. In the back of the room, where the staff moved in and out, where the noise of plates and whispered coordination drifted out in warm, greasy waves. Jennifer saw it when she came to find them. Her mother was smiling. Rosa Martinez had the particular gift of smiling in situations that did not deserve it, a skill she had developed across 30 years of being underestimated. Her father sat with his hands flat on the tablecloth, his expression the careful neutral of a man who had decided not to spend his dignity on people who wouldn't understand its value. "They said there was a mix-up with the seating," Rosa told her quietly. "It's fine, mija. The food smells wonderful." It was not fine. Jennifer found Daniel and told him. He looked uncomfortable, not angry, not ashamed on her behalf, just uncomfortable in the way of someone who wishes a situation would resolve itself without requiring him to do anything about it. "I'll talk to my mother," he said. He did not talk to his mother, or if he did, nothing changed. Later in the evening, when toasts were being made, Richard Hawthorne stood at the center of the room and spoke about Daniel with the warm authority of a man who believes his approval is the sun by which all good things grow. He spoke about the Hawthorne legacy. He spoke about family values. He spoke about his hopes for the union. He did not mention Jennifer's family by name. He gestured vaguely toward Jennifer's people with the phrase, "hard-working folks," delivered in a tone that made hard-working sound like a consolation prize. Eduardo Martinez looked at his hands. Rosa reached over and put hers on top of his. Jennifer, standing at Daniel's side in the center of the room, smiled the way her mother had taught her. Not the smile of someone who is happy, but the smile of someone who is building something, quietly, that no one else can see yet. It was a Tuesday when Jennifer found out. She had borrowed Daniel's laptop to print a shipping confirmation. A small domestic errand, and a message appeared on the screen. Not a notification she had to search for. It appeared the way things appear when they want to be found. It was from a woman named Cassandra. "Last night was perfect. I know this is complicated, but I'm not going anywhere." The message was dated 6 days prior. There were others. Jennifer did not read all of them. She read enough. She sat at the desk for a long moment, the kind of moment that stretches and expands like a room you didn't know had a door. Then she closed the laptop, printed her confirmation from her phone instead, and went to make herself a cup of tea. She did not cry. She would tell you if you asked her that she had no tears available for that particular moment. The information had arrived in a form that bypassed grief and gone directly to calculation. 6 months. They had been engaged for 4.
That meant the affair had begun before the ring, before the rooftop, before she had stood in her parents' kitchen and watched her mother press her hands together and say, "He seems like a good man, Jennifer. Your heart knows what it knows." She called her best friend, a woman named Diane, and spoke for 2 hours. She called her father the following morning and spoke for 40 minutes. Eduardo listened without interrupting, another skill he had developed across 3 decades of building something in a world that preferred he stay small. When she finished, he said, "What do you want to do?" Not, "What should you do?" Not, "Here is what I think you should do." Just, "What do you want?" Jennifer thought about the table near the kitchen, the gesture toward Jennifer's people, the word maintenance delivered like a verdict. She thought about Rosa in her burgundy dress, smiling at a table she had not been meant to occupy with dignity. She thought about the tone of Margaret Hawthorne's voice in a hallway she had not been meant to walk down. "I want to finish it, but I want to finish it right." Her father said, "Then let's make sure it's worth finishing." She did not confront Daniel. She did not cancel the wedding. She let the machine continue to run. The invitations, the venue, the dress fittings, the rehearsal dinner. She attended everything. She smiled at everything. She brought her parents to every event they were required to attend and watched the Hawthornes seat them near kitchens and away from windows and speak to them in voices calibrated to condescend. And she gathered everything she needed. Her father, meanwhile, made a call to his accountant and another to his attorney. Not aggressive calls, quiet ones, the kind of calls that arrange facts into rows. Eduardo Martinez's company, Martinez Premium Facility Services, had been servicing Hawthorne Capital Group's headquarters for 11 years. The contract, renewed annually, was worth $430,000 per year. The firm was valued, according to a quiet assessment conducted that spring, at approximately $12 million. $12 million, built on floors that Richard Hawthorne had never once thought to look down at.
The morning of the wedding, Jennifer woke before her alarm. She lay in the hotel room the Hawthornes had arranged for the bridal party to stay at a property they owned, which Jennifer had noted and filed, and she listened to the sound of the city waking up. Chicago in June, the lake somewhere out there doing what lakes do, indifferent and eternal. Rosa came in at 7 with coffee and a container of the sweet bread they always had on important mornings, pan dulce from the bakery on Halsted Street that had been there since before Jennifer was born. They sat together on the edge of the bed and ate it the way they always had, without ceremony, just the simple pleasure of good bread and a mother and daughter who understood each other. "Are you ready?" Rosa asked, not meaning the dress or the hair or the venue. "Yes," Jennifer said, not meaning those things either. She had 3 things prepared. The first was what she knew about Cassandra, documented, time-stamped, specific. The second was a summary of her father's company, valuation, revenue, client roster, the 11-year contract with the Hawthorne Capitol Building. The third was a single folded piece of paper in her bouquet, on which she had written the words she intended to say. She put on the dress, which was, in spite of everything, genuinely beautiful, ivory silk with hand-stitched details along the neckline, chosen months before the world revealed itself, and she looked at herself in the mirror for a long moment. She thought about her grandmother, who had survived a flood that took the first floor of her house and told the story of it for 40 years with a kind of ownership that made the flood sound less like a disaster and more like a credential. Survival, her grandmother used to say, is not just about getting through. It is about getting through and then having something to say about it. Jennifer Martinez squared her shoulders. She picked up her bouquet with the folded paper inside it, and she went to get married. The ceremony itself was, by all appearances, a wedding. The vows were exchanged. Daniel's voice did not tremble. Jennifer's didn't either, though for different reasons. The rings were placed. The officiant smiled.
200 people sat in white chairs in a room full of flowers and believed they were witnessing a beginning. The reception was held in the grand ballroom of the venue. The Hawthorne family had rented the entire building, a gesture of abundance that was also, Jennifer had come to understand, a gesture of ownership. Everything in the Hawthorne orbit was a signal. Everything said, "We are the kind of people who rent entire buildings." Rosa and Eduardo Martinez were seated at table 14. There were 16 tables. Table 14 was behind a pillar. Jennifer walked past it when she was being escorted by the photographer and saw her father sitting there, hands on the tablecloth again, with the careful expression of a man who has decided this too will not cost him his dignity. Rosa was speaking to another couple at the table, people from the catering company, Jennifer would later learn, who had been given a spare seat. They had seated her parents next to the catering staff. Again, the wedding planner, a woman named Andrea who had been nervous around Jennifer all day, in a way that Jennifer now understood was guilt, caught her eye from across the room with an expression that said, "I was told to, and I'm sorry." Jennifer nodded once. She noted it. She filed it. The cocktail hour unfolded. Champagne moved through the room on silver trays. The Hawthorne family circled the room like a weather system, accepting congratulations with the ease of people who expect them. Richard clapped Daniel on the shoulder and made remarks about the future of the Hawthorne name. Margaret air-kissed Jennifer with the warmth of a woman who has won something and doesn't need to be gracious about it. Clarissa found Jennifer near the bar. "You look absolutely stunning," she said, in the voice she used for compliments that weren't. "Thank you," Jennifer said. "Today felt like the right day to look my best." Clarissa tilted her head, deciding whether that meant anything. Jennifer smiled and moved on. At table 14, Eduardo had poured his own water and was reading the menu card with the focused attention of a man who has learned to find interest in whatever is in front of him. Rosa had found a candle on the table and moved it slightly so it caught the light better. They were making it beautiful. They were making table 14, behind the pillar, beautiful. Because that is what the Martinez family did. They took what they were given and they made it better, and they did not complain about the giving. Jennifer watched this from across the room. She pressed her thumb against the folded paper in her bouquet. She felt its edge, its weight, its readiness. She waited.
It was Richard Hawthorne's toast that did it. He was not scheduled to toast at that moment. The toasts were meant to come after dinner, organized, planned, with a proper arc. But Richard Hawthorne was not a man who waited for his designated moment. He stood when he wanted to stand, and the room arranged itself around him the way it always had. He took the microphone from the DJ without asking. He spoke about Daniel. He spoke about the Hawthorne legacy again. More this time, with the full force of a man who believes his story is the main event and everything else is context. He talked about values instilled from birth. He talked about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. He talked briefly and with the pointed vagueness of a man who enjoys implications about how Daniel had always been drawn to projects that needed polish. Projects that needed polish. Someone at the Hawthorne tables laughed, a knowing, recognizing laugh that told Jennifer this phrase was not new, that it had been used before, in smaller rooms, about her. She heard her mother make a small sound. Not a sound of pain. Rosa Martinez was beyond that. It was more like the sound a person makes when they are confirming something they already knew. A quiet, settled, terrible sound. Eduardo said nothing. He put his hand on the tablecloth and looked at the floral centerpiece and breathed. Richard Hawthorne raised his glass. 200 people raised theirs. And Jennifer Martinez reached into her bouquet, removed the folded piece of paper, and stood up.
She did not move quickly. She was not dramatic about it. Or rather, she was precise about it. which can look like drama to people who have never had to be precise. She walked to the DJ booth and she held out her hand. And the DJ, a young man named Marcus, who would later tell people this was the best wedding he had ever worked, looked at her face and handed over the microphone without a word. The room did what rooms do when the bride takes the microphone. It went quiet. Richard Hawthorne, still standing at the centre, looked at her with the expression of a man who is not accustomed to waiting for someone else to speak. Jennifer unfolded her paper. She looked at it once, then she looked up. "Thank you, Richard," she said. Her voice was clear and warm and carried the entire room. "That was a beautiful toast. I'd like to add a few things of my own." She looked at Daniel. He was smiling, the automatic smile of a man who doesn't yet know what is happening. "Daniel," she said, "I want to start by telling you what I know, because I think you deserve the truth on your wedding day, even if you haven't been offering me the same courtesy." The smile began very slowly to change. "6 months ago," Jennifer continued, still in that clear, warm voice that did not tremble, "you began a relationship with a woman named Cassandra. I won't share her last name, because she isn't the issue here. The issue is that you proposed to me while that relationship was ongoing, and you continued it through every fitting, every planning meeting, every rehearsal dinner, every evening I spent learning to love your family." The room was a held breath. 200 people who had been mid-sip, mid-bite, mid-sentence, all of it stopped. "I have the documentation," she said, simply, without.
The room, Jennifer was told later, stayed quiet for nearly a full minute after they left. Marcus, the DJ, to his eternal credit, waited the full minute and then put on a song that was neither celebratory nor funereal. Something instrumental, ambient. Music designed to give 200 people something to do with their hands while their brains caught up. Daniel did not follow her. She had expected this. A man who lets 200 people ask what the right thing to do is not a man who runs toward a moment that requires him to answer. Richard Hawthorne sat down heavily in his chair. Someone brought him water. He drank it like a man who needed something stronger. 2 of the guests, it would later emerge, were clients of Martinez Premium Facility Services, executives from properties on Eduardo's roster who had come as Daniel's professional acquaintances. They found Eduardo's business card in their pockets on the way home and called on Monday morning. The Hawthorne family attorney reached out within a week, not aggressively, but quietly, the way attorneys do when the people they represent understand that they have, in fact, done something that cannot be undone by aggression. Jennifer did not respond to them. She had an attorney of her own. Margaret Hawthorne sent a letter. It was, by the account of those who read it, not an apology. It was an explanation, which is a very different thing. It enumerated reasons. It contextualized. It did the work of a letter written by someone who believes that if you understand why something was done, you are obligated to forgive it. Jennifer read it once. She put it in a file. She did not respond. Daniel called 4 times in the 2 weeks that followed. She answered once, on the 3rd call, and listened for 90 seconds.
he was explaining. He was also, she thought, relieved in a way he didn't know how to hide. Relieved that she had made the decision he had not had the courage to make, had cleaned the room he had been standing in, and not knowing how to leave. She told him she wished him well. She meant it. It costs nothing to wish someone well when you have already decided they are in a different chapter than the one you're writing. Cassandra, she was told, did not stay with him either. Some messes, it turns out, are no one's foundation. In the 2 years that followed, Jennifer Martinez restructured her role at her father's company and led the expansion of Martinez Premium Facility Services into 3 new metropolitan markets. The company added 12 new corporate clients. The valuation, last assessed, had risen. She is not married. She is not, she will tell you, in any particular hurry. Rosa and Eduardo celebrated their 32nd anniversary that fall at a dinner reservation Jennifer made at a restaurant in the city with windows that faced the lake. Eduardo wore the charcoal suit. Rosa wore a new dress, deep green this time. They sat at the best table in the room, by the window, where the light was good. The Hawthorne Capital Group building on Michigan Avenue renewed its contract with Martinez Premium Facility Services for the 12th consecutive year. The contract was handled, quietly and professionally, through the standard channels. Eduardo Martinez does not make a point of it. He doesn't need to. Richard Hawthorne, it was reported by those who move in those circles, has not used the phrase hard-working folks since. Whether that represents growth or simply caution, Jennifer doesn't much care. She has stopped measuring her world by what people like Richard Hawthorne do with their lessons. She has other things to tend to. Now, I've told you this story, and I want to tell you what I think it means. Because a story without a meaning is just a sequence of events, and you can get that anywhere. Jennifer Martinez did not ruin a wedding. She ended a lie at a wedding, which is a very different thing. She chose the hardest possible moment, the moment designed to make silence feel like grace. And she decided that silence was not a grace she was willing to offer. Some of you will wonder, was it worth it? All that planning, all that waiting, the dress and the flowers and the walking out in front of 200 people? Here is what I know about worth it. The things that are worth it rarely feel like it in the middle of them. They feel like work. They feel like fear you've decided to do anyway. They feel like a folded piece of paper in your bouquet that you've read so many times you don't need to look at it anymore. Worth it is what you call it afterward, when you're sitting at the right table, by the window, watching your parents hold hands in good light. Eduardo Martinez started mopping floors when he was 19 years old. He built $12 million with his hands and his consistency and his absolute refusal to be ashamed of honest work. He sat at table 14 behind a pillar with his hands flat on the tablecloth, and he did not spend his dignity on people who wouldn't understand its price. That child is not a working class story. That is a story about class. Real class. The kind that doesn't require a building with its name on it. Jennifer walked out of that room holding her parents' hands. I want to remember that part. Not the microphone. That was just the moment. The part that matters is that she walked out holding their hands. She knew exactly who she was and exactly who they were, and she chose them in front of everyone at the cost of everything she had planned for. That is what survival looks like when it is done right. Not just getting through. Getting through and then reaching back for the people who made you and walking out together into whatever comes next. Thank you for spending this time with me, dear. Come back next time. I'll have another one ready. Grandma's Untold Survival Story.